Exchange rates in the system must be maintained for the currencies you use. These exchange rates are always maintained for each exchange rate type, which are keys that store exchange rates of particular types. For example, you can enter specific buy, sell, and average exchange rates under different exchange rate types, as with other important general settings. SAP provides a list of exchange rate types which usually meet most requirements. To review the available exchange rate types, follow menu path SAP NetWeaver, General Settings, Currencies, check exchange rate types. You'll see a list of defined exchange rate types for various purposes. In accounting, the most commonly used standard exchange rate type is M, standard translation at average rate. Exchange rates. Now we'll maintain exchange rates between the currencies we're using. Maintaining exchange rates during when the system is in production use is normally a user task, and many companies also establish an interface to automatically upload exchange rates from a feed from a central bank or other financial institution. To enter exchange rates, follow menu path SAP NetWeaver, General Settings, Currencies, Exchange Rates. On this screen, for each exchange rate type, in our example, M, you'll maintain the exchange rates for, you'll maintain the exchange rates between the currencies specified in the from and to fields using either direct or indirect quotation. In the indirect quotation method, okay, in the indirect quotation method, the exchange rate provides the price in the to currency that you must pay for a unit in the from currency. In the indirect method, the rate is reversed. The valid from date determines the date from which you entered. The valid from date determines the date from which the entered exchange rate is valid, and exchange rates remain valid until a rate with a subsequent date is maintained. You can maintain as many exchange rates as required and then save your entries. Taxes. Taxes are a major topic in SAP. Most selling and purchasing transactions are affected by taxes, and quite stringent requirements for tax reporting exists around the world. Therefore, the tax setup in your SAP S/4HANA system must reflect the tax requirements from both process and reporting points of view. As part of financial accounting global settings, you must set up the tax procedure and assign tax procedures to your company codes. Then you must set up the relevant codes that this procedure uses. The tax determination process will be discussed in detail later. Tax procedure. A tax procedure contains the settings for performing tax calculations in SAP S/4HANA. This complex configuration object uses access sequences and condition techniques to determine the proper tax codes, which in turn determine the tax rates. general ledger accounts to be posted to, and other relevant settings. The tax procedure is maintained at the country level, which makes the tax procedure valid for all company codes for a given country. SAP supplies sample tax procedures for each country. You should copy these samples to create new tax procedures by modifying them, or if no changes are envisioned, you can use the standard procedures. Check the settings for standard tax procedures for the United States by following the menu path: financial accounting global settings, tax on sales/purchases, basic settings, check calculation procedure. You'll find the following three activities related to setting up the calculation procedure: access sequences, define condition types, define procedures. A tax procedure is a collection of condition types, which in turn uses access sequences to determine tax records based on specific fields as defined in those access sequences. Double-click the Define Procedures activity to examine the tax procedure for the United States. Here's a list of tax procedures. Notice tax procedures for the United States: OTX, USX, and TAX, USJ, which are based on jurisdiction codes. The tax rates differ by jurisdiction, which are determined with these jurisdiction codes. Procedure OTX USX is designed to use the external calculation of the rates for each jurisdiction from third-party software. Select Procedure Tax USJ and click Control Data on the left-hand side. This screen shows how the tax procedure is defined. Condition types are assigned for each step number. Then, when defining tax codes for this procedure, tax codes will be assigned at this condition type level. Now, go back to the define condition types activity. This shows a list of condition types which can be assigned to steps in the tax procedures. Select and double-click MWAS, which is the output tax condition, to see its settings. You have to scroll down to get to it. Now, if you click the Records for Access button, you can see the condition records based on the fields defined in Access Sequence MWST. As shown here, country and tax code are the fields that would determine the taxes in this case. Click the Execute button to see the existing records. Finally, let's check the definition of this access sequence. Go back to the screen shown earlier and select Access Sequences. The system issues a message that this table is a cross-client table. In other words, the configuration in this table is fundamental and affects all clients of the SAP system. Such configuration should be maintained only in the global configuration client, and you must proceed with caution. This shows a list of defined access sequences. Select MWST and then click Accesses in the left on the left hand side of the screen. You can have one or more access sequences. In this case, it's just one. Number 10. Select it and click Fields on the left hand side of the screen. The tax procedure is how the system determined that it must check the country and tax code fields for condition type MWAS. This rule comes from the setup of the access sequence MWST shown earlier and mapped to condition type MWAS. Let's see how tax procedures are used in tax codes to determine the correct tax. Tax codes. Tax codes in SAP determine the tax percentage and tax account posted and are assigned at the line item level in documents. Tax codes are created per tax procedure and either are determined automatically, usually in logistics documents, or can be entered manually in financial documents. Let's walk through how to create tax codes for tax procedure TAXUS. First, follow the menu path Financial Accounting Global Settings, Tax on Sales / Purchases, Calculation, define tax codes for sales and purchases, or enter T code FTXP. The system asks in which company you want to create a tax code. Enter US and continue. Then enter a 2-character tax code. The naming of the tax codes should be uniform within the project, and several different strategies are available. Some companies opt to have a letter as the first symbol and a number as the second, with the letter representing whether the tax code is an input or output tax. Whatever your naming convention is, you must ensure that enough space exists in the naming ranges to accommodate all tax codes needed. A country normally uses 30 to 40 tax codes, and sometimes even more tax codes are required. In this case, let's name the new tax code O2, represented by a 10% sales tax as shown here. The O indicates that this tax code is an output tax, whereas one of our input tax codes would start with I. The various tax codes, O1, O2, O3, and so on, will represent output tax codes with different rates or purposes. Once you enter a tax code number, the system opens the property screen for the new tax code. On this screen, you must select whether the tax code is an input for purchasing transactions or an output for sales transactions tax code. Add a description for the tax code and define other optional settings. For example, the check ID indicator ensures that an error message is displayed if the tax amount entered is incorrect. The EU code/code setting is used for European Union reporting. After you click continue, you'll see the main configuration screen for your new tax code. This screen shows the condition types available from the tax procedure for which you created the tax code. For the US, we'll use a calculation procedure with jurisdiction codes. Rates are entered for each jurisdiction, in this case, California. The condition types are mapped with, in our example, account key NVV, which determines the general ledger accounts to be posted to. You can enter tax rates in one or more condition type levels. The system will go through all the levels of the tax code when determining the proper taxes. You can also check the general ledger account assigned by clicking Tax Accounts from the top menu. Then the system asks for the chart of accounts and shows the general ledger account that will receive posting from this tax code, as shown here.